Hangouts for a while. Hello, guys. No, I've put that on actually. I put that on, guys. It's your boy, and with me is my boy, formerly known as Netscape, Humanity Forever. How you doing, my good friend?
Oh, pretty good. And yourself?
Apart from the tickly nose, it's okay. So, for those of you who don't know, Netscape was a part of Gamergate. I myself was part of Gamergate, although initially I kind of wasn't, but a sympathetic person. But I guess we can get into that little while later. And Netscape was, I don't know how big you were in the community, because I wasn't big at all. But you well, I guess you're well known.
Just a couple of subscribers, but I mostly did like real life stuff, like the convention panels and things like that.
And you were very much of the. Is it what was it? Well, the GG Revolt. We can all get into it in a little while, but they called you the ethics cooks. I don't know what, and I guess I was an ethics cook for a while, but I was never GG Revolt. But I guess that was a natural development for me. So what? Where were you? Were you ethics only?
I wasn't ethics. No, I don't think ethics was. I mean, ethics was part of it, but that wasn't the entirety of Gamergate. There was a lot going on, a lot of stuff regarding social justice and censorship, as well as ethics.
Exactly. Yeah, you kind of can't have one without the other. That's a problem. So, like, you've recently not read a book. You have been reading it, but you've been writing a book about your experiences and the history of the event. Which, by the way, it's going to be the 5th anniversary. I realized that this year.
Yeah, August of this year. Damn.
I think I was in my 2nd year of uni or 3rd year when that happened.
Yeah, I graduated since then. So.
Yeah,
got my undergrad at my.
We're now nearly 30-year-old boomers. That's how fast time flies. Because we were just talking, guys, and me and Netscape are pretty much the same generation, a year or a couple months apart. I don't know exactly when you were born, but you're 26, right?
Yeah, 26.
Yeah, so 92?
Yeah, 92.
Yeah. I'm 26 this year, so oof. we're old grizzled veterans. So what made you decide to write a book as opposed to just make a massive documentary on YouTube?
Well, I've wanted to write a book for a long time, and I'm not sure if you recall, but during Gamergate, there were like 8 people who said, "I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book," and only like one person did. James Desborough wrote a book last year, I believe, talking about his experiences from within the movement. And I haven't had a chance to fully read it. Actually, I read part of it, and it got water damaged. I left it in my car, and I guess the seal on the back seat of my window wasn't fully sealed, and water got in, and it was bad. So I had to pick that up again and read it again. But I wanted to have a complete history of the movement. This was a big part of my life, a big part of a lot of people's lives, especially with the whole culture war that's sort of blown up since Gamergate. And I wanted to have sort of an objective look, something that people can look at and be like, hey, this is what happened from an unbiased perspective. Obviously, I have my biases, and I'm upfront about that. I talk about my biases in the prologue, if you can call it that.
Yeah, you do, yeah.
So people know I was involved. I do have some biases, but I do try to look at things from an objective perspective. And the first 2 chapters focus pretty heavily on quotes from different people on both sides of the aisle, to sort of get an idea of what they were thinking at the time. So these are contemporaneous quotes, and sort of people putting the narrative in their own words of what they thought it was, what they thought it was about, the issues that they cared about, so on and so forth. And then from there, I sort of branched more into the specific historical events. And so thinking about writing this book for a long time, I decided, okay, you know what, let's sit down, let's do it. And so January of this year, I sat down, I wrote maybe two chapters, and I was stuck. I had sort of a roadblock for a couple days.
Hey?
And then within like 3 or 4 weeks, I finished it. So I wrote like the entire rough draft in like 3 weeks.
Intentionally write a short book to get the hang of it, or was it just it happened to be a short book?
It just happened to be a short book. But now that I think about it more and more, I actually wouldn't mind maybe writing more books. I have a few ideas for fiction books. So I'm not sure how that's going to work out, but I have a few ideas for possible fiction books I might write in the future that are short
Vivian
books.
James put ups with her crazy left-wing cousin. Or is she a right-wing cousin, the blonde one? I don't know. I forgot the law.
Oh, Lillian is the blonde one. She represents anti-Gamergate.
Oh yeah, Lillian is anti. Vivian is pro. So anyway, how did you find Gamergate, by the way? Because I don't know if you've seen Three Arrows video about the rabbit hole thing. You know, the anti-SW rabbit hole.
He's done a bunch of videos. Was it the one where gosh, I did a response video to one of them. Where the thumbnail is like a bunch of different YouTubers' faces.
Yeah, basically, he claimed to have talked to a lot of people who used to be anti-SUW. Yeah, sure, right. And basically, he boiled it down to this general thing, like how they became what they were. And it's like, I've talked to loads of people, and everybody is different. Every single person had a completely different journey. Like when I found Gamergate, which led me down my path, which I don't even consider it a red pill moment or anything. I consider it just intellectual. I don't mean to sound big brained or anything or pretentious, but it's a journey, you know. I used to say where it's going to take me, right? But I found it on a football forum. I mean, soccer, you know.
Really?
Someone posted the Zoe post in a general forum, and that's how I found everything. Like,
wow.
And then they posted either Jim or Monday Matt's videos, and that's it. That goodbye, old Mitch. Hello, new Mitch. You know.
Yeah, I got involved. Well, see, I actually had a similar experience to you. And around like August or maybe it was early September of 2014, I was on an MMO forum, MMO Champion. I'm not sure if you are familiar with that one.
Sounds familiar. Is that the one that V used to go on to wind people up? Or was that a different one?
Well, they were pretty lax with the rules on MMO Champion, so it's possible people were going in there to troll. But people posted about the Gamers Dead articles, and I had no idea what the fuck was going on. I just saw these articles, and I was pissed off like everybody else was. I maybe left a comment like, "Oh, these games journalists don't understand us," or something along those lines. It was so long ago that I don't remember exactly what I said, but I saw this topic, and then I sort of moved on with my life. Right? Maybe left a response, and that was it. And then in February or January of 2015. I started to see a few YouTube videos from Sargon, from Internet Aristocrat, from Mundane Matt, people like that about Gamergate. I'm like, what is this whole Gamergate thing? I'm like, oh, that's what those articles were about. And so sort of got down the YouTube rabbit hole, I guess you could say, and learned more and more about this and decided, you know what, this is interesting. I'm going to jump in and see what this is all about. So I made a Twitter account just for that and started talking to people on both sides. People on the anti-Gamergate side oftentimes weren't very open to talking to supposedly, neutral people.
Oh God, they weren't.
But the pro-Gamergate side was very open, and so I developed some online friendships, and also I felt a connection with their cause because I've always loved gaming. I've always been a gamer since I was a little kid, actually. So it really resonated with me, especially when I started seeing the censorship campaigns against like Pillars of Eternity and Lionhead Studios, things like that. That really sucked me in. I decided, you know what? I know what side I'm on here.
Yeah, I remember I just viewed it as a continuation of the many fights we've had with censorship and moral busybodies. I saw it as no different to Jack Thompson and the media, because you'd always see like the odd like news story every now and then of, oh, this guy, he's addicted to games, and oh, it's terrible for the kids, that usual stuff, right? And I saw that as no different. But I remember because reading your book, it said the memories started coming back. You probably saw my tweets like, oh my God, my mind, everything's coming back. Because honestly, I actually haven't thought about it as much until recently, and everything started coming back. And I remember wondering why these people were fighting us. So I was never like SJW, but I certainly could have been light, I guess. I don't know. I remember thinking, why are they attacking us? I thought we had types of people they would be, fighting for and things like that, because we're just, guys just trying to live our lives, not being interfered with by moral busybodies. Because I was used to people like Christopher Hitchens, who he died by then. But no, instead, these same people who would defend us actually are no different to these other people, these right-wing moral busybodies, and that blew my mind.
Right. I didn't really talk about this in the book. I thought about
Yeah.
including it, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm still on the fence. I might throw it in there, a few pages maybe in about this. But
Yeah.
this sort of mindset, I think it's sort of always been with us. I've done a video about this recently.
Do you mean moral
How
panics?
the sort of mindset where you have this moral busybody mindset, right? And that can manifest itself any number of ways. It can manifest itself through the Jack Thompsons of the world and the religious right who were freaking out about Dungeons and Dragons, or the Comics Code Authority, or even alcohol prohibition, the Salem witch trials, so on and so forth. There's sort of this mindset that people have where it's not enough that they just live a good and comfortable life of their own. They want to control the lives of other people, and that can take the shape of morality, such as alcohol is immoral, violence in comics is immoral, so on and so forth, or it can take the shape of people's political views, and you see this with like the social justice left and the alt-right.
Yeah, like I'm surprised that they didn't end up coming up with a slogan like "Fingers that touch controllers shall not touch ours." Like lips that touch alcohol shall not touch ours. They're not all these. Like, why didn't they come up with something like that? That would have been meme to death, I guess. But
well, I don't think they want to think of themselves as that type of person. Just like the soccer mom who asks for your manager probably doesn't want to think of herself as that kind of person.
Yeah,
they think of themselves as being above that, but they are like that.
Very much so. I would agree with that. And so, what do you think about the impact that Gamergate has actually had on culture over the last 5 years? Even though it's pretty much dead and buried. Like when I was reading your book, I remember it being dead by 2015 almost, not just 2016. So
there was a lot going on in 2016 too.
Yeah, maybe I'd missed that. I don't know. I remember some of these things happening, but I don't remember them being part of Gamergate, I guess.
Well, there was around mid to late 2015, you started to see a lot more people sort of step away from Gamergate and that whole scene. But there were still definitely a lot of people still involved with like Operation Double Vision, things like that.
That was Appabend, wasn't it?
Appabend, yeah, he launched that one.
Jesus, like he must have. I asked you, didn't I, that he must have been dead young when he did that.
He's like in his early 20s now, so he must have been like 20 or 19 or something.
Yeah, and he's still. I'm glad he's been successful because he's like one of the few people who are still kind of from that mold,
Well, and he still does content just like that.
Yeah,
just about video games, about anime, about comics. Well, I'm not sure about comics so much.
I've been trying to cover that stuff, but all the politics has kind of been taking much of my attention away.
Well, so to answer your question, though,
yeah, the influence, the impact,
the influence. Well, first of all, I think in the gaming scene, it certainly got us a lot more aware, both of the social justice stuff, but also about games journalists and just how pernicious and corrupt it is. Like obviously, games journalism had always had sort of a bad reputation, but I'm not sure it's ever been this bad. And it woke people up to what's going on in regards to censorship of games, and it woke people up in regards to just how horrible games journalism is. But in the broader context, I'm not really sure, because the book is called First Battle of the Culture War, right?
But it wasn't
where
really.
You started to see, not really. I mean, the atheist community had experienced stuff like this, but this was the first time that people really pushed back en masse, where you saw a massive backlash that lasted for years. And this is where you saw terms like social justice warrior become popular. And this is where you saw a lot of people develop their views. A lot of the big YouTubers who are anti-SJWs or skeptics today, they got a huge portion of their audience, if not most of their audience, from Gamergate. People like Sargon, people like V, people like that.
Us?
Us, yeah. We got our audiences in no small part due to Gamergate.
All these immediately after, when people started to look around for content,
And the thing is, I'm not sure if this probably would have happened at some point anyway. There would have been a backlash at some point. It might have come from the comics people. It might have come from broader society on college campuses. There would have been a pushback at some point. Gamergate and the gaming industry just happened to be where the major, where the Franz Ferdinand was shot, right?
Well, yeah, it's when they bit off more than they could chew, essentially. I don't think
Yes.
they anticipated the level of backlash that they received, because they were just thinking, well, it's going to be like Occupy, it's going to be like the atheist community, where we're going to come in, we're going to roll over the people who are kind of, I don't mean to sound rude or horrible, but weak-minded. They're easy pushovers. They don't understand how everything works, how to deal with these types of people. We'll ostracize people like Thunderfoot. Oh God,
Well, they underestimated gamers. We
They
don't
did,
just have
yeah.
one life.
We have many, but
Yes.
but they thought that we'd just be, because when you look at, I mean, people. I don't know if you watch Lou Levi still. Lou Leval.
I'm subscribed. I haven't seen a whole lot of his content
But
recently, though.
he and many other people, and it is true. A lot of gamers, we are kind of impulse buyers. We complain about some practice, but we end up buying the game that exhibits these horrible practices, like microtransactions, things like that. I guess they must have believed the same thing, that they're going to complain a bit, but they're going to suck it up. But we didn't.
Well, but
Even
look at the history of gaming, right? We've
Mm.
pushed back hardcore against Jack Thompson.
Yeah.
In the 90s and 2000s, and the religious right during this time. So looking back at previous attempts at sort of gatekeeping in the industry, trying to stop people from making certain types of games, like in the past, that had always failed. So yeah, we do we are bad about being consumers in regards to microtransactions, things like that. A lot of people do still support that type of product, and that's unfortunate. But when it comes to our hobby being under attack, especially from the outside, or perceived from being from the outside, we really do rally together.
I guess they thought because they were trying to approach it from the inside, it would be different. Like they thought, well, we must have some kind of clout, which they didn't. Some of them did.
No.
The ones who got converted, but I think they quickly found that, this is an uphill struggle. It was just an incredible. What was it? 40,000 people using the hashtag at any one time.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the exact numbers were. I know there were over like 1 million tweets by like October.
Yeah, my Twitter account only became active due to that. Like, I had it in 2009 and I never used it until 2014. That's how much of an impact Gamergate had on me, let alone the political stuff and the social stuff.
I wouldn't be on Twitter or YouTube without it, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, I would have been on YouTube, but I would have been doing shitty podcasts. That's where I started, and I tried to cover it on my podcast, and the people weren't anti; they just didn't want to cover it. Fair enough. But if I hadn't have covered that and done the podcast, I wouldn't have learned the basic skills to make videos. So, kind of glad in a way. But do you think that considering it's still being mentioned in the mainstream media consistently, because they can't help but use this as a boogeyman, as influence is still strong, or in a different, or it's transformed into a different thing? Because people said it's now more of a watchdog, but I don't think it's even a watchdog anymore. No, whenever anything that could become a Gamergate 2 has happened, it never kicks into gear.
Right. I mean, I guess you could say it's a watchdog in the sense that most of us are still at least halfway paying attention to what's going on. So we do, like, if there is some sort of big event, we do all the same people who were involved in Gamergate still come together and still retweet our, critiques and share our videos and things like that when there's a big event. So in that sense, you could say it's a watchdog, or with things like deep freeze, right, where we're keeping track of different ethical violations. You could say it's a watchdog in that sense too. But yet they do want to say that we caused Trump to become president. We caused the alt-right, that we caused all this stuff.
Funnily enough, Lee just released a video saying that it got infiltrated and taken over by Nazis. And it's like, dude, it was dead. The Nazis, well, they weren't even Nazis. It's called GG Revolt Nazis. It's just misrepresenting them.
Well, some of them were, though. Like, if you look at what happened to Barlow and John Kelly.
But they were a minority.
Do you remember them?
Yeah, I remember John Kelly. Oh, no. What was the other one, though?
Verlo and Tim.
Oh, Verlo.
They actually did become basically Nazis. They were talking about removing all black people from the United States on a live stream.
Verlo is a Hispanic, right?
Yeah, I'm not even sure he's American. He might be Spanish, though.
I'm pretty sure he's not Spanish. He's like Latin American.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know him personally.
But I remember wasn't he the one that sounded like Napoleon Dynamite? Very well. I remember.
Yeah, well, it's funny because if you watch his old videos,
Mm.
he's all like this very soft spoken. Why can't we all come together and love each other? And now he's like this die-hard alt-right guy. It's like, what the fuck?
It's all a show. It's they're just puffing their chests, as they say. But yeah, but they were the minority of the minority. That's how little there were, and I think he's only saying that because he's got new friends in the very left wing places. But
Well, GG Revolt, I talk about that in the book a little bit, and that was a weird situation.
It really was, yeah.
When it first launched, though, it didn't actually start out as crazy as it became.
No,
Actually, it was mostly just there were crazy people, no doubt, but it was mostly just them saying, "Hey, we want to make a breakaway forum to Gamergate HQ and Kotaku in Action and Twitter."
And that's absolutely fine. Like,
yeah, that's absolutely fine. And then they started getting into like doxing people, and that's when it went off the rails.
By them. I remember that. I made videos on it back in the day. Wow, God, it's crazy how all this happened. And like to say that they took over Gamergate, they didn't. Why would they leave?
Well, if you look at the numbers, like it was a very small group. Like during their, I mean, when they first launched the forum, like the first 2 months, they did have like 100 people, roughly 100 active posters according to the stats. But then within a few months, it died. It was just like a dozen people.
I suppose they just couldn't keep it up. I think they were the minority that never had much power. They had a few personalities like Ralph, but even he wasn't enough to convert people or convince people that GG Revolt is the way. And I think the fact that it was called GG Revolt probably didn't help them either, because it kind of implied infighting.
Well, they were going after Gamergate people more than they were going after the social justice warriors.
It was Saga with Sargon. I think I did a parody video of that.
Yeah, you don't understand UK law.
Yeah, you don't understand UK law. Like Sargon does. Like he lives there.
But look, I don't understand, American law all that well. I don't understand every single law that's in the books. Nobody can. There's so many. But that's a really weak talking point.
That was literal autism before the autism thing became a meme.
Yes. And as for Waz Lee, I actually plan on hopefully talking to him pretty soon. I reached out to him.
Really? Wow. He's going to do a live stream? He usually doesn't.
Maybe. We'll see, because he hasn't gotten back to me yet. So
don't pull any punches. Because he won't. But
well, I might be the worst person to do a conversation like that, because when I have these conversations with people from the other side,
let me be nasty.
I always try to be as polite as possible, to give as much charity as possible, to try to understand where they're coming from.
I mean, it's just challenging. That's what I mean.
Yeah, I'm certainly not going to just mindlessly agree with him. I'm going to push back.
Exactly.
But I'm going to do so in a very polite way.
I've thought about a tactic, and it's something that people used to do way back in the day on political talk shows. They would just let you talk. They would just ask a question, constantly ask questions, right? It's like they get you going on a topic, and then they'll ask you a question, and you'll hang yourself by your own words, basically. And I thought,
well, I'm not out to get
nowadays they attack each other, don't they? They have a fight. But back in the old days, they used to just ask a question, and it lulls them to a false sense of security, and they say something wrong, and that ends their career essentially.
They're hoisted by their own petard.
Exactly. That's what I'd like to do with some of these people.
Well,
especially if I wanted to go out in the real world, and when I'm
isn't that the problem though? Isn't that the problem, Charming Man? Or Mitch, sorry.
Don't worry about it. It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, Mitch. Isn't that the problem though, where we all want to sort of destroy the other side, right? That we don't really make an attempt at trying to convince them, at trying to reason with them. And I'm not saying you can with everybody.
It's not necessarily that. Like, I don't think I'll convince a diehard, but I can still destroy them with kindness. You know. You know what I mean?
I think it depends on if they're coming at you in good faith or not, right? If they're just coming at you with the intent of destroying you, then by all means respond in kind. But if they're coming at you trying to have an honest conversation and trying to honestly understand your perspective, then you should give them a fair hearing.
Exactly, yeah. So, like, when you were writing the book, did you like find anything that you didn't know before, or was this all everything that was in pretty much everything you already knew, and you were just trying to, sort it out into like a narrative or something?
Really, it was mostly, if not entirely, things that I already knew.
Mm.
Just because I was so involved at the time, like it
Mm.
was my life, like
I didn't
literally.
even know Game
I didn't,
Journal Pros wasn't actually the chief reason behind all those articles. I thought it was that they used that to communicate, but it wasn't. That's what I learned.
well, there's no proof that it
Mm.
was. Right, there might
I'll
have
have
been a
another one.
separate, mailing list, or there might have
Mm.
been something from there that people missed.
Mm.
But there's no evidence, direct evidence, that
Mm.
the mailing list was behind the articles. So it's just as possible that there was groupthink, or maybe
Mm.
there was coordination, but it was through a different platform.
But I think since then, especially what's been going on with people like Alex Jones and Tommy Robinson recently, I think there was probably collusion. I think it's not something you can say with that doesn't have any merit to it. I think you can definitely make that argument, and you wouldn't sound crazy. I think, especially with what's
Oh no,
been going on.
you definitely wouldn't sound crazy. You'd have a very convincing and compelling
Mm.
case. But with the book, I tried to keep it as close to the facts as possible.
Mm.
I'm not going to go out there and speculate that, hey, this might have been collusion if we don't have direct proof.
Mm. So what else was there? So like with the narrative, you already knew this, didn't you? Things like that. So let's continue down that line.
Yes, my life basically was Gamergate. It's sad actually. I became sucked into this, and that actually makes it a very good case study almost for myself, looking back and reflecting on my own life at the time, and also just sort yes, UK law, reflecting on what people were doing at the time, because obviously I can't speak for everybody, but oftentimes young people are looking for meaning and for a cause and for purpose in life. And in the past, people got this from religion, and they got this from other means. And there's a lot of healthy ways you can find that. There's a lot of healthy ways you can search for that through your work, through your family, through faith, through a political cause in some cases. But there's also a lot of unhealthy ways you can find that too. And you can find that through obviously through your politics as well in a very negative way, right? You become so sucked into your politics that it becomes your identity, it becomes who you are, it becomes the only thing that you care about. I think you're seeing that a lot with these people on the social justice warrior side, right? You're seeing these people who every single thing is related to their politics. They can't enjoy a movie. They can't go out with friends.
Have to take off their lens.
Everything. Right, exactly. And they can't take off those goggles.
Mm.
And it becomes everything to them. And I found myself in that same position, but on the other side. A lot of people, I think, on both sides of the aisle, became so sucked into this that it almost became unhealthy. And it's in part because of the decline in people finding meaning and purpose through other means. And this can also have horrible effects for the society, right? We're seeing the suicide rate on the increase. And this is in part, yes, it's young people. The suicide and suicide attempt rate for teenagers is actually through the roof. Well,
Yeah,
it's Jonathan Haidt talks about this, and he wrote an entire book about it, The Coddling of the American Mind.
Yeah, I've got that, yeah. I've not read it yet.
I haven't had a chance to read it either. I've seen a bunch of interviews with him, though. And, the suicide rate for young girls, for instance, has it's either doubled or tripled in the past, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it's mostly, middle-aged men, right? These people who, they've worked their way to the top of the hierarchy, right? Mm-hmm. If you want to go all Jordan Peterson on you. They work their way to the top of the hierarchy. They're doing okay in business, and they haven't found value or purpose through that. They're this middle manager in a corporation, and they don't know what to do with their life, and so they turn to drugs with the opioid crisis. They turn to suicide. They turn to depression, and it's a really unhealthy spiral. But also on top of that, you have other things too, right? You have the decline in social community and social cohesion, right? You have, and Ronald Putnam wrote a book about this too. Have you read Bowling Alone?
Bowling Alone? No, I've not read that one yet.
It's an old book. It's from 2000, I believe, where he talks about this breakdown. And in the past, people would all come together and they'd go to church together. They'd go to community functions together.
Putnam, though.
Yeah, Putnam, yeah. I can send you a link to
the
book on Amazon or something. Oh, you found
it?
Yeah. Yeah, and in bowling leagues was an example he used, right? The decline in bowling leagues. Because people no longer have these real life connections with their fellow neighbors and their fellow people in the community. and this is having a lot of negative effects too. And he believes that a big part of it has been technology, right? It's so easy nowadays for people to get sucked into technology through online communities, online games, and this was 2000, so I can only imagine that if this is true, if technology is causing this social cohesion to break down to some extent, that it's only gotten worse with social media.
Well, that's something that's going to take a very long time to research and to truly figure out. I don't know. I find that I probably would be a lot more lonely if I didn't have my internet friends. Because it's kind of hard now that me and my IRL friends have graduated and we've all got jobs. It's hard to meet up with each other,
Well, is that true
Yeah.
though, or would you, if you didn't have your online friends, or you didn't spend as much time with them, would you just find other ways to meet with your friends, right? Because your friends also have their online communities, I'm sure, like on Facebook or whatever.
Probably, I don't know, but
So you would just you'd go grab a pint with them, or you'd go to church, or you'd find some other way to interact with people. I don't even know who my fucking neighbors are.
I
I've
know
lived.
my neighbors a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've talked to them like passingly in the hallway, or just
Yeah.
but I don't know who they are. I know where they work a little bit, but not. I don't have in-depth conversations
Mind
with
you,
them.
I do know. I do recall as a kid knowing my neighbors more than I do now.
As a kid, yeah. As a kid, I remember like everybody knew who their neighbor was, at least where I lived.
It's
Like
not that I
everyone
can
knew
do it
each
with my
other.
mates, though. It's finding the time. Really, that's what it is. It's
Well,
not about.
I think that's more and more an excuse, though,
I
because I
wouldn't
tell
say
myself
it's an
that
excuse.
too. Oh, if I had more time, if I had more time. But then, what do you do with the time that you do have? You're playing video games, or you're reading a book, or whatever,
Mm.
and that's a very solo activity. I mean, sure, there's social activities in gaming, no doubt, if it's an online game, but still, even there, that's not the same. I think as having a real life connection with another human being.
True. Oh, don't worry. I know that it's not the same. All I'm saying it's mitigated what would have been quite lonely. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it doesn't make me not feel lonely. Just it would feel a lot worse, I think. But I'm not under the illusion like a lot of people. I've seen this with Keemstar, especially. Like he meets somebody online, and in a couple of months they're his best mate. Like Leafy's here. I don't know if you're aware of this drama or anything like that. I don't know if you ever.
I don't pay attention to the drama as much as
It's not
possible.
the drama. It's more the psychological stuff behind it because it's really telling that Keemstar, who's been an online troll and now an online celebrity for nearly 10 years now, pretty much, can somehow think that some kid that he's met online and he's met IRL only a few times can suddenly be his best friend, and they've only known each other for a couple of months. Like it's stupid, you know what I mean? It's delusional. I know what you mean.
Well, and it's kind of a tragic situation too, right? Because if you're one of these people, I'm lucky. I had real life friends throughout school, and I actually went to college with my best friend, so that really helped. But if you're one of these people, right, you're kind of a nerd, you're kind of unpopular at school, you're bullied or what have you, and you don't really have friends, not real friends, or you might have some people who you hang out with every once in a while, but not like real friends. You are stuck because you graduate college, you graduate high school, and then you go to the workforce, you go to college or what have you, and you're alone. You have nobody in your life. You have maybe family members, but that's it. And so what do? You have an apartment or you have a house, and you go home, you go to work, you do your job, you come home, and you relax and play video games or whatever, and then you do the same thing over and over and over and over again. And you develop this pattern, and you're barely interacting with fellow human beings. You're barely interacting with other people.
Definitely
And these
creates,
people are so lonely, and they turn to drugs, and they commit suicide because they're depressed.
with loneliness is a killer, but doesn't seem to be considered one though. But anyway,
Well, there was a study done recently. Well, sorry, there's a study done recently in the Netherlands, I believe, where it's if you live by yourself, so you don't live with a partner or a girlfriend or boyfriend or a friend or anybody, you're like I don't remember what the exact number was, but you're like 2 or 3 times more likely to kill yourself.
It's pretty telling. So we need to get back onto Gamergate. So
well, it's all connected though. That's the
it is
thing.
connected, yeah. But
The reason these social justice warriors exist is because of this breakdown.
Well, really, they exist because of the 1968 political changes in the left. But I guess if we want to go more philosophical, how they are as people, then yeah, you're right. But anyway, we need to get more into Gamergate because that's the
Sorry.
book.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
fine. I know what you mean. I know what you mean. But maybe you should write a book on that. Actually, you should be the next Robert Putnam. But anyway, so what do you think? What do you think was like the best achievement it ever got? Because I've been thinking about this. What did we actually achieve? And I think I've been black pilled on it a little bit. If you know what the black pill is.
Yes. Yes. You've become very pessimistic.
Not pessimistic, because that implies there's no hope. I think there's hope, but just Gamergate, what we achieved and what we didn't achieve. I think what we didn't achieve outweighs what we achieved in the end.
Especially in regards to games journalism, I'd say.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, what do you think? I want to hear what you think first.
So in regards to our greatest achievement, I think it was just pushing back, especially with these censorship campaigns, pushing back and providing an alternative narrative. And I remember in 2015, there was every single week, if not every single day almost, there was a new controversy. And oftentimes these controversies were calls to get get different games censored or to remove content from certain games and so on and so forth. There's these massive campaigns to pressure game developers. And we really pushed back on that. And around the Protein World incident is when we saw the change. Because Protein World basically stood up and said no to these people. And I'm not sure if that was the impact or if it was just people. Because remember, this was right before summer. And then summer hit. So I guess the social justice warriors were out of school. Because these are a lot of young people too. And they just sort of stopped. It just died. All these campaigns to pressure, Pillars of Eternity and company, games like that, to get them to remove these elements, it just came to a halt.
I would just like to add, though, maybe their contract ran out in Starbucks.
maybe. And it was a very different time because we saw just controversy after controversy after controversy, and then all of a sudden nothing for weeks. And I think pushing back against that and then refusing to let them have a foothold in this sphere of influencing game developers, at least influencing them through censorship campaigns, right? If they want to make a suggestion, like the Tracergate guy, remember the Tracer controversy?
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
He posted on the feedback forums, please remove the sexy post, right?
And they did it.
And they did, but then they replaced it with something else that's also sexy. So, but I'm fine with that, right? If he wants to make a suggestion and the company listens to it and says, hey, that's actually a good idea, let's do that. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But when you're engaging in pressure and trying to use social shaming to get what you want, that's where I have a problem.
I do remember Blizzard got somewhat shamed for that, though. I remember they did get quite the backlash.
Well, from the games press, they did get a lot of people. But games journalists writing stupid opinion pieces, I don't care about that.
So what else do you think was an achievement as well?
Well, I think we raised awareness about the games journalists and games journalism and the issues inherent with it. And we didn't really see a lot of progress there, though, right? We saw they updated their ethics policies, or they created ethics policies, but they didn't really follow them.
No.
So that was sort of a hollow victory, a Pyrrhic victory, if you will. But then we also created like Deep Freeze and started catalog in a wiki to catalog all this stuff. So every time they fuck up, we'd have it cataloged right there. And that games journalist is going to have that following them forever. If you Google the games journalist's name, and the third or fourth result is about their corruption or alleged corruption, that reflects very poorly on them. We also cost Gawker over 7 figures, they said so.
I remember thinking, like, what we did well was, like you said, the pushback. It was unprecedented. It created a precedent for how to push back on these people. I think we did well to some extent in creating new media. So One Angry Gamer would not exist, potentially, without Gamergate. I don't know. I think so. I think the owner was in Gamergate, wasn't he?
One Angry Gamer?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was in games journalism before Gamergate, though, to begin with, I believe. But he blew up. He blew up because of that.
Yeah, so we did that. The Tech Raptor at one point before they sold out.
Yeah. And then MITCH Gamer. And then some of these websites are still up and running, but they haven't really gotten the clout
No,
that
they
we wish
haven't.
they would have.
Problem. It's not like it's kind of like unlike Comicsgate where they've actually gotten clout, which is quite interesting. They seem to be very savvy. Whoever it happens to be. So if it's Van Skyver or your boy Zach, they seem to be developing a good following, not just on YouTube, but also their comics.
Well, what they're doing is really interesting too. Like the Comic-Gate thing is actually, it's got some parallels to Gamergate, but it's actually a lot different because
It is a lot different. Yeah.
they're a lot more focused on creating their own work, which is great. And that's not only something you can do.
Really.
It is, because with video games, you need an entire crew, you need a huge budget. With comic books, it's just one or two people working on a project and then putting it on Kickstarter or whatever.
I guess what we should have done really was continue down the media route, create our own media, like continue building on the foundations, like One Angry Gamer, the GG. What was the other one? There was the GG, One Angry Gamer that I used to read a lot.
Games Nosh. The Escapist for a while. Tech Raptor for a while.
Movie Bob. But that's the thing, isn't it? Like, whatever our successes were, apart from the pushback and empowering people to talk and speak out, which has had a long-lasting effect. Whether or not we'll win, I don't know. I think we will, but of course I would think that.
Well, game journalism is dying, though. Like it's dying. Even
yeah.
creating alternatives that were more ethical. I'm not sure that's sustainable in the long term. Because YouTube and Twitch, people can look what the game is like. They can see the gameplay for themselves and make their decision to buy the game or not based on that. They don't need to read a 20 paragraph.
Wouldn't you? So like it would be a YouTube channel as opposed to a journalistic outlet. And if you want to make articles, you can. So like Super Nerdland, for example, they have a YouTube channel, I think, or they do video content, and they also have written content. So you can kind of have both. I think that's probably where the future is going to be, because you can never get rid of written content. People do like reading.
Yes.
It's just all online now. So
that probably is the approach for the future, right? It's text combined with video.
It's the fusion of media. but like that's something we should have pushed for more, I think. And then also the fact that we just didn't. I think we should have gone for the kill completely. This might sound weird, but we really should have made sure that these people died quicker than they are now.
Oh, the journalists or the social justice people?
Well, the social justice is going to take decades to uproot.
Well, how do you kill? Like we did Operation.
I'm not being literal, so
obviously, you're gonna have to live in a country with these people. You're not going to murder them.
No, I would never do that. That's just
right. But like the journalists, though, right? How do you kill them, right? We cut off a lot of their ad funding, which was very successful. But some people are still going to go to that site.
I suppose,
and as long as they have enough people to go to the site that makes the money, they're just going to keep doing it.
I guess it would be just a slow. I don't know. Again, I've only recently been reflecting on this, so all I can really say is we should have made sure that these people never ever truly recovered. Because the only way,
in some way, I think we did do that. I actually did discover one thing through Gamergate. Oddly enough, they're writing about it. Yeah. That is, if you go back and look at a lot of these smaller sites that were anti-Gamergate, and they were publishing the Gamers Who Did articles, things like that, they're gone. I had to use the archive.org or archive.is.
Were they? I don't remember them being particularly big.
No, a lot of these sites, they're gone now. They closed up. And like that's something nobody talks about. Like all these sites are gone now.
Like, what was she called again? Thingy Alexander, you know who I mean. The wino.
Megaphone, yes.
Yeah, Megaphone. Like, how is she gonna afford all that like expensive wine now? To have it.
Well, I'm not sure if she's unemployed, but I know a lot of these sites they shuttered their doors because I'm going back and trying to find all these sources, and it's actually been hard in some cases because I had to go back and find the archived versions.
In a general, unthought of way, the only way Gamergate was truly going to be successful if that whole establishment was uprooted and just destroyed, and something was replaced that was more open and more to the point, rather than just talk about stuff that's not got nothing to do with games. I'm only speaking in the general term there.
Well, I think you have to look at the structural incentives almost, because the problem is not just like these people have a different opinion than us, right? That would be fine in and of itself.
Yeah,
the problem is in many cases, what kept this going for so long was clickbait. They would write the most ridiculous articles on purpose. They would purposely try to get people outraged because outrage brings them clicks. So we have to think about how we can better incentivize people to write, either real journalism, in-depth journalism, or incentivize them to provide very insightful commentary. And I think there's a few different ways of going about this, right? There's the subscriber-based model, which I think we're going to have to move more and more towards, and encourage more and more people to move towards, where if there's a site that you support or that you like, you're willing to pay money to back them up. You're willing to pay money to back the journalism that they're performing. And so you'll buy a subscription, like a magazine subscription, and support them that way. Or if you want to get onto the wider, a more wider and widespread way of doing this, like, are you familiar with UBI?
Sorry?
Are you familiar with UBI?
UBI,
Universal Basic Income.
Oh yeah, Universal Basic Income. Yeah.
Yeah. So UBI, people have also proposed like the democracy dividend, right? Where you get like $50 a month or $100 a year, and you can use that to support a political candidate who you support. So therefore, it's getting money. It's not even really getting money out of the politics, but it provides an incentive for politicians to say, look, I'm not taking any corporate money, any union money, anything like that. I'm getting all of my donations from small dollar people.
Yeah.
And we're seeing more and more politicians doing this. But what if you had it so as part of your universal basic income, you get $1,000 a month. $900 goes to you. $50 goes towards a political campaign of your choice. And also $50 can go towards maybe a media site that you support or a publication that you support. And I don't think people are going to be giving money to publications that write articles like 10 reasons why Mario is racist. They're going to be giving their money to the most insightful commentary that they receive the most value from, not just something that's going to make them angry because they saw it on Facebook.
It's an interesting point that it's basically using the market. It's like a free market tactic to basically whittle down their influence, which is interesting. But the problem is they've got the backing of some of corporations who run monopolies. And for some reason, the government is not breaking up these monopolies for whatever reason. But that was a later development anyway. So I'm trying to think of another thing because again, I've been reflecting because of your book, and it's been 5 years nearly. And I do think that a lot of people who are no longer like on not the bandwagon, I guess you call it a bandwagon, yeah. I think they got frustrated with how long these culture wars last. And there are even people denying that we're in one. I mean, I'm not saying that Emp Lemon and people like that are mainstream YouTubers, but they're more mainstream than us, right? Even though they share some of the similar opinions, it's their clout. You know what I mean?
You mean people who make videos about this type of content, about the stuff that's going on?
He makes content less on that, but more YouTube culture. It's hard to explain. But when people like him or even PewDiePie, when they've implied or said that we're in a culture war, and you've got people denying it, it's like there's obviously something because the games journalists thought we were, And I think I don't know if it was you or somebody else said this, but we should. No, it was Lou Levine. We should have treated it like that, like we're going to war. Maybe we would have been better prepared. I don't know.
Well, one of the biggest disappointments, I told James this, is that really we were not the best at articulating our views and our values. But it's also understandable too because a lot of these people were a lot younger. Like Applebend was like 18 or 19.
Which is not his first language.
Yeah, and you and I were very young when we got involved, and we didn't really have a lot of experience with politics. I assume you didn't anyway.
No, I didn't know. I thought it was for the first and only, currently only time in 2015. Yeah, the year after.
So we weren't great at making these arguments. We weren't great at understanding the principles behind our views. We just sort of went with the flow, and we should have been a lot better at articulating our values and understanding them.
And I think in many ways, what didn't help was we didn't have the platforms nor the power at the time. Still to this day, really, even though Sargon's only got 1 million subs, he's nowhere near as big as, say, somebody in the mainstream media who's got this big corporation just doing everything for him. So all this person has to do is just write an article, and they'll beam it out they'll upload it up to like millions of people. They have much bigger reach. Well, maybe not bigger reach, but yeah, they do have bigger reach. They reach more of the normies, you know.
I don't know. We do have a pretty big reach, I think. I mean, not just like Gamergate in particular, but people who are skeptical of these identity politics, right? Like pretty much everybody on the right now is like, you see people like Ben Shapiro talking about this, and even mainstream people who aren't really big in politics, like Joe Rogan, right? Joe Rogan talks about this stuff all the time. He's had on Steven Pinker. He's had on Sargon. He's had on Ben Shapiro. He's had on Jonathan Haidt, so on and so forth, to talk about these issues.
But I think that's just him as a person, though. He probably always was interested in these things. That's why he's been friends with Alex Jones for 20 years, you know, which was, did you see that?
Yes. I'm actually halfway through listening to it, so I haven't seen the whole thing.
I caught the end. It was still fucking beautiful.
Yeah, the Daily Wire is not the best on video games. I actually did a response video to Matt Walsh.
Is he the young-looking one, or is he the bald one?
He actually doesn't have his own. Actually, he did just launch his own podcast recently. He's the hyper-religious guy.
Oh, is he the one?
He's like a die-hard religious guy.
Is he the one who looks like Steve Shives with the beard?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, I can't watch him just because he reminds me of Steve.
Yeah, he did an article, and this is sort of a thing you're seeing on the right now more and more. Like the right left video games alone for like the past 10 years. But they're starting to come back a little bit and talking about video games, not talking about banning them or anything like that. But they're saying that video games are bad for our culture, bad for our society. You see this with God, it wasn't Noah Rothman, but someone on Commentary Magazine, John Podhoretz, and Matt Walsh. They have the same exact argument, which is that, you know, video games, their argument is actually understandable to an extent, because look, there's only so many hours in the day, and you only have so much free time, right? So how you choose to use that.
I can't hear that.
Their argument basically is that you only have so many hours in the day, and you only have so much free time, and you could do any number of things during this free time, right? You could build social bonds, you could study, read books, you could do whatever, and there's almost anything you choose to do would be better for you than playing video games.
As you mentioned before, is it though, really? Because you're taking time out of your day to interact with people.
To some extent, yeah, with social games, but also more than that, right? The same argument could be made about fiction books. The same argument could be made about movies, so on and so forth.
Going to church.
Well, I think that there is a community aspect, a real life community aspect to church, and there's also giving you a purpose and meaning, right? Because you've found God,
maybe
you have
being
faith.
Exposed to one particular group of people isn't very healthy over a long period of time.
So they don't really view video games as art. I think that's where it comes from. Like Matt Walsh and John Podhoretz, they don't view video games as art. They view video games as being just a game, a toy, right?
When it really isn't. I don't think it is.
It certainly has aspects of that, right?
But so does movies, and even people make drawings just for general consumption.
Right, exactly. There's always been an element in our entertainment which is just mindless fun, and that's okay. There's a room for Call of Duty. There's a room for the Transformers movies, so on and so forth in our society. Not everything has to be some deep intellectual thought experiment, but there's also room for games like Mass Effect or Deus Ex, right, which touch upon deeper philosophical themes. There's a room for both of those types of content, and not all video games are the mindless, shoot the enemy and move on to the next objective, right? Not all video games are like that. There's a lot of video games that are very deep and insightful.
Oh, it's not deep or insightful, but it's relaxing.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with wanting to come home from work
and games,
relax and play a game.
I've learned stuff from historically influenced games, like Total War used to have, before it went proper mainstream. They used to have some pretty good information in their games that you learned a lot from, and it always stuck with you because it was a good game, So the idea that it is just mindless fun and it's just toys is ridiculous. But these are people who are just boomers,
Yeah, they're in a very different generation. They didn't grow up with games. The
Daily Wire also, ironically, wouldn't be anywhere near where they are without Gamergate. Ironically enough, even though I don't think they've really covered it, but
it's funny. I actually had the opportunity to write for the Daily Wire.
Really?
Write an article as a freelancer. about
Wow.
Gamergate.
Did you do it?
No,
Oh, you should have.
I was so busy at the time. I was working 3
Oh,
jobs,
yeah.
so and I was going to school too, part time. So
One day you can always hit them up. Say, hey, about that thing.
yeah, well, it's crazy. Like I said, Gamergate
Hmm.
was my life, and it's actually realizing this and reflecting on this, and the type of person I was at the time.
It wasn't
I
my life.
developed a sympathy almost for the social justice people, right, and what they're going through. Because in the way I look at politics now, and the way I look at society now, I don't look at things like, oh, I got to have my issue out there. I got to put my issue out there, my opinion. I don't really care about that so much anymore.
Hmm.
Like I do put my opinion out there, sure, but I mostly look at things from like an analytical and philosophical and sociological perspective. Like what is causing people in mass to adopt these views? And that's why I said it's all connected, right?
I know what you mean. Yeah, I've often thought what pathology is behind this. Particularly feminism and things like that. Why is it that a lot of these people always seem to have, and the stereotype is true, daddy issues, things that men have done in their life because they're individuals, not because they're men, and they adopt this philosophy. I mean, I remember even. Do you remember that girl called Mai Dominguez? She's a good friend. I consider her a good friend of mine. She talked about some sort of similar to how they basically manipulated her because something happened to her in her life, and they basically took advantage of her in an emotional state and brainwashed her into their movement. I mean, that's cult-like behavior. That's what the communists did back in the day. Oh, you have a problem with money or your boss or something like that. Hey, join our movement and don't worry, you'll totally be the guy who's in charge this time. Or there will be no leaders. It'll all be the fascists who sprung.
Right. That's worked out so well throughout history.
Exactly, yeah. But they
Well,
use the same tactics, don't they? It's emotional. It's
people are in search of answers, and when you buy into an ideology like this, it gives you all the answers to everything. Everything can be explained.
It's like Jussie Smollett. Like, what made him do this hoax? Was it attention, money, politics? Who knows? I still don't know exactly why he did it.
Yeah, I mean, he's already got money. He's already got attention. He's got his own TV show, for Christ's sake.
Well,
he did. He lost it. But
see, that's the thing. People thought clearly he must be being axed if he's doing this so he can stay on. But no, apparently he wasn't even being axed because he's an important part of the show. So, I don't know. Maybe there was a political aspect to it. Maybe there was a money aspect to it. Maybe he did just want the attention. Maybe he's just an attention whore. Or he has deep-seated mental issue. Well, they do. They do. Let's be fair. A lot of them do.
Well, a lot of people in our society in general have a lot of problems. And I'm not talking about like schizophrenia, right?
Yeah.
But I'm talking about like just people have mental issues.
Well, I would a lot of the
we don't.
We
aren't very good at working this stuff out on our own. Like, actually, oddly enough, Joe Rogan, he also interviewed Dr. Phil, right?
Yeah.
And he basically touched upon all the points that I'm really big on, which is that we have to understand that you're not going to solve all these problems with just taking a pill and you're going to be fine, right? That just hides the problem. It puts it under the surface. You have to actually work through these problems as an adult and figure out what the underlying causes are and try and move past that. Rather than just taking a pill to feel good for a little while.
You know what Jordan Peterson says as well? Because he's a clinical psychologist. He's not against the idea of helping people with medication, but he knows it's not the be all end all.
Right, medication can play a role, and Dr. Phil actually talked about that too. He talked about how medication can help you when you're in your darkest moments, so that you go out there and you start to find more positive avenues of expressing your feelings, more positive avenues of. Sorry.
I was on medication when I was at school, antidepressant, stuff like that. I always thought it never really helped. I always said it would help, but I never felt like it did.
Right, and of course, you certainly don't want to discourage medication in all cases, right?
Oh, no,
you don't want the person who has schizophrenia to stop taking their meds, right? That's not something you want.
Because that does help them.
Yes.
And for me, I personally didn't think it did. People around me thought that it did. Apparently stopped me from shaking a lot, but of course it would. That's what it's supposed to do, but mentally I don't think I felt good. I didn't feel worse. Well, at one point, I was on 3 pills. Well, they weren't pills, tablets, really. I was on 3 tablets every day. I ended up having 2 panic attacks or 3. So they have to produce it.
Well, sometimes the side effects are worse than the drug themselves, or than the condition.
I was lucky, I guess, because there's some people that have even worse side effects. In fact, that drug I was on was later introduced in an episode of this like daytime soap that's set in an hospital. I'm like, oh my god, this guy was giving his daughter this pill for whatever reason. He was like a doctor or something, and he was trying to help her, but he wasn't doing it ethically. He was just putting it in her food, and she was getting really ill. Like she was obviously having some kind of God, this is stupid. She was having some side effects to it, and it was like, so that's why you're putting risperidone in her food.
Well, it's really tragic, really, what's going on with prescription drugs, and we really are overprescribing.
But I don't know if there's one here. Nobody talks about it. I don't know if there is here.
What?
Like, the opiate epidemic.
Opioid epidemic. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I live in the Midwest, so I know full well.
I suppose I should have a look, but I don't think we do.
It's horrible here because so many people are dying. So many people are becoming hospitalized, and just their lives are going down the drain because of this.
Apparently, we have a looming crisis, but we don't have one yet.
Yeah, one of my coworkers actually just passed away.
Really?
And I'm going to his memorial tomorrow. And it wasn't opioids; it was prescription drug of some kind. He accidentally overdosed or had an allergic reaction. They're not entirely sure, and they just found out he died, and it was because of the pills, they believe. And just there's another person, but that's just one person out of hundreds of thousands who've had their lives shattered in the past few years because of this stuff.
So, do you have any regrets during your time in Gamergate? I can't think of one other than we didn't go far enough. But
on a personal level, or as a movement?
Both, yeah.
On a personal level, I wish I would have been more more intelligent approaching this stuff. I was a kid. I was an idiot, and I didn't really think very deeply about this topic. So I was just moving day to day through it. And also on a personal level, I wish I would have been a lot nicer, actually. I was kind of a dick. Like, I made videos attacking people in some cases. And I didn't try to understand where they're coming from. I didn't try to So this is something I talk about in the book, and in the very last chapter, chapter 7. And it's this habit we all get into as YouTubers, as podcasters, so on and so forth, where we talk to our audience rather than trying to talk to the other side. So you and I will make a video, and it's like, oh, this stupid person. We laugh, and the audience is enjoying it. It's a beatdown. But we don't frame our arguments in a way that someone who doesn't already agree with us would watch that and be like, hey, you know what? He makes a good point. He's very reasonable, very rational. He's backed up with evidence. He's backed up with data. He makes a very reasonable point. So I think as a society, we're going to have to start changing the way we approach these conversations.
I mean, hasn't there been studies done where in the 70s there was nowhere near as much vitriol between the two quote unquote sides, left and right, than there is now?
Yes. Or partisanship anyway. I'm not sure about vitriol. Like, if you go back and watch like William F. Buckley, he interviewed some real fucking partisan hacks back then. There were people who were diehard partisan hacks back then, no doubt about it. But it was not as partisan as it is today.
I feel it's gotten worse because those partisans took over, and they managed to influence a lot of people into that way.
Part of it is the race issue, right? Almost, because you have not that obviously one of the greatest achievements of our society was putting Jim Crow and segregation behind us, right? But
back then
you had true. Well, you did have slavery.
Well, not in the 60s.
That's true.
The mainland, in England especially, slavery was illegal, which is weird. In the Empire it wasn't, but in England itself it wasn't. You couldn't have a slave. And that was an old law, which was used by many anti-slavery campaigners to help people free themselves. So if a slave ever set foot on English soil, let's say he ran off the boat and hid in the wilderness, no longer a slave.
Okay, but sorry, back on track.
Sorry, that's me being a nerd. Go on.
to get back on track with the with like the civil rights movement, right? Before that, you had a very weird coalition within like the Democratic Party, for instance, right? You had in the North, you had these sort of liberal people like the FDRs and LBJs and so on and so on. Well, insofar as you can call LBJ liberal,
Yeah.
who were very much more pro civil rights. But then in the South, you had the Dixiecrats, who were diehard pro segregationists like George Wallace,
Yeah.
and they had this weird coalition. And then the Republican Party was almost dead in the South. It was almost completely dead. You know, it got a large portion of the black vote, and they were the civil rights people in the South, and in the North they were sort of like economic conservatives. And so there was this weird coalition where you had people in both parties who were like pro-segregation, anti-segregation, and also had very different views on economics, and they were much more closer together. The parties were, but as we gave black people the right to vote, and then in the South, we saw that change. We saw the Republicans gaining more and more influence, and so on and so forth.
I remember thinking about Britain. You made me think about Britain just now because we didn't have Jim Crow. And as far as I'm aware, we didn't even have any laws that said that they couldn't do this, they couldn't do that in the 60s. And yet there still was a parallel social justice movement that uses historical stuff. Like they have to really stretch it. You know, they have to go way. I know, like in a lot of black identitarians and what have you, in America use slavery, but they do too here over here. And it's like, we don't have anywhere near the level of.
Well, you say you guys didn't have slavery, and I think
we didn't have slavery.
From what I've read.
No, what I need to explain.
You did not officially have slavery. No, in Britain itself, you did not have it. You had laws against it on paper, but your aristocrats did have slaves.
Yeah, in their colonies where they could have it, but not on the mainland. But in fact, people had forgotten about that law. That's why I forgot the slave's name, but the slave basically he got caught, and then they had a big trial over it, and then they found this law and said, well, he's not a slave now because you can't have it here.
And you had but about.
I'm not saying that we never had it.
I'm not saying you didn't.
I'm trying to be.
You also had there were 10,000.
Oh yeah,
black people living in Britain in like 1700.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if those people were slaves or not. You could
not all. No, they wouldn't have been. Not in England. No.
Maybe serfs though. At
not worst, in 1700. The serfdom was gone by then.
Okay.
200 years at least. Yeah. Or at most. Yeah, the feudal system was dead by then. But no, they were just normal people. I don't think they were elites or anything. That was only much later on. But yeah, there were loads of different communities. They were smaller than they are now, but I think one of the first slave owners in America wasn't white. I'm pretty sure. One of. I'm not saying he was the first, but he was one of. Yeah. Because people forget that back then it was considered almost natural. This horrible act that nobody should ever go through was considered natural. It's even in the Bible. Job, was it?
Oh yeah, you can't beat your slave, but you can own a slave.
Because
which was considered progressive back then, right?
Yeah.
Not being able to beat your slave was like progressive.
Well, it's like, you're better off keeping them alive than beating them, because that's money going down the drain. Indentured servants, though, yeah, you can work them to death because after a while they're free to go, and that happened a lot. People who were indentured servants who would go to America or wherever, they'd be basically worked to death. Because you were given a certain amount of time to work, so it could be 10 years, 20 years. And after that period of time is up, they get to leave. You don't want that. You don't want them to leave if you're somebody like that who works on the plantation, who owns one.
Well, and what we did after we abolished slavery was we replaced it with sharecropping, which it was basically it changed things a little bit because now you had to pay the people, but it was the same people working for you. The same people who were your slaves, now they're working for you for pennies.
Apparently, according to my good friend Black Lord of Fenrir, there was 3,000 black slave owners during the time of slavery in the US. Interesting. That's quite more than I thought, because Actually, slave owners were the minority, weren't they?
Yeah, they were definitely the minority.
Only people who could own land. Also, slaves weren't always, working the land.
But they were also house slaves, so on and so forth. They were, maids and butlers, what have you.
I mean, they were like blacksmiths, carpenters, things like that. Anything. I mean, that was more of a minority, and that was more in the north. But yeah, it wasn't just that.
Sorry, we're way off topic with slavery.
But it's bad, guys. That's all you need to know. But anyway, yeah, they used that as like excuses. Like David Lammy was doing it recently, and also Spike Lee was mentioning it in his speech against Trump. Was like, what's Trump got to do with that?
Hey, I don't think Trump owned any slaves.
No,
could be wrong, but I don't think he did.
Exactly. Like, it's ridiculous. But they keep using this as an excuse for their activism. It's like nobody's alive from back then.
Well, so to sort of push back here, right?
Mm-hmm.
The effects of slavery are, and Jim Crow especially, being more recently, can still be seen today, right? You have these in two main aspects, right?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, where do these people live? Where do a lot of the black people in the United States live, right? They live in these rundown communities. And these communities, they were there for generations and generations and generations, and now they're stuck going to schools that are way, way worse than schools in the white majority areas. And they have fewer opportunities because of this, because they're in these rundown cities. And then you also see things like in the city of Detroit, right? Mm-hmm. You see the manufacturers, like, so Detroit was one of the biggest manufacturing cities in the country. It was a big auto town. And then all those jobs left. And now if you've lived there your whole life, you've lost your job, got laid off, your kids are going to a rundown school. And in the United States, schools are funded through property taxes. So as the value of your house declines, your taxes go down, which sounds good if you're living there, right? Hey, fewer taxes. But at the same time, that means less money for the schools and so on and so forth. So we really should find some way to it's a state level issue. But like in Missouri, one thing I'm a big supporter of is putting all the funds raised through property taxes for schools, taking all that money, putting it into a large pot, and then distributing that to the schools on a per head basis. So all the schools will receive equal funding.
Mm-hmm.
But then that's kind of unpopular because you're going to a good school that's getting a lot of money. You don't want to take a cut. So it is somewhat controversial there. And also another aspect is through wealth. So if you were a person who was, or who your family had been historically discriminated against, right? You don't have as much wealth as the average white family or average Asian family, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you have less wealth, you have less opportunities to pay for schooling, higher education, so on and so forth, to go to a private school, so on and so forth. And so we should also be looking at charter schools to provide people with greater opportunities in addition to improving the public schools. And oddly enough, Cory Booker, one of the people running for president here, I don't like Cory Booker very much.
Mm-hmm.
From what I've seen, he's just a snake politician, like all of them, like most of them. But he actually came up with an interesting idea. It's UBI for kids. So his idea is that every child will have a savings account, and we're going to put aside, $1,000 a year in this savings account, and then nobody can touch it. The parents can't touch it. The kids can't touch it. Nothing until they turn 18. And when they turn 18, they'll have that $1,000, or that by that point, $18,000, right? $18,000, and they can use that money to either go to school or to go to a trade school, become an apprentice. They can use it to sort of move out, to get an apartment and have a safety net, a buffer, so on and so forth. And this could drastically improve the lives of everybody. And so poor white people, poor black people, everyone will benefit from this. It's a race neutral proposal. But part of his idea here is that it will help eliminate the wealth gap, so that everybody will have a. Sorry?
Where would that money come from?
Presumably through taxes.
Oh yeah, I thought so. It seems very socialistic.
I wouldn't say UBI is socialistic, right?
That particular one sounds 18 grand for every kid. That's quite a lot.
I don't think it's socialistic at all. I'm very much a diehard capitalist.
It just sounds.
I'm a diehard capitalist. But I believe that there should be regulations on capitalism, and that as a society, we should decide what ideas are good, what ideas are not good,
Mm.
in regards to structuring a safety net for people who slip through the cracks.
Explain
Right?
how pre 1965 is it was when the laws were enacted? Not
Oh,
the control stuff. It was more the Civil Rights Act 65. There was another one in 68, I think. It doesn't explain how economically they were doing much better in the 60s than they were later on, though.
oh, what do you mean?
Like the black community was doing much better in the 60s than they were in the 70s and 80s, and even now.
Well, there was systemic discrimination back then.
Well, there was, but in the 70s and 80s when there wasn't, they did worse.
Well, we also saw one of the worst things that happened to the black community, which is that over the past couple of decades, there's actually been a huge decline in, and this is also affecting the white community too, but to a lesser extent,
Happened over here as well.
in families. And you're
Yeah,
seeing
yeah.
the divorce rate in the United States is close to 50%,
Mm-hmm. That's
and it's higher in some communities. Like so,
wow.
it's actually the evidence indicates that kids who grow up in two-parent households
Mhm.
are way better off. Like if there's a privilege out there in the world, it has got to be growing up with two stable parents.
Mm-hmm.
They and also black kids,
Mm-hmm.
and all kids actually, who graduate from high school and end up getting a job, a full-time job, they escape poverty.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, like 98% of people, this is from the Brookings Institute, 98% of people who graduate high school don't get married or have kids before the age of 21.
I don't buy the whole race realism stuff. It's not. I don't think it's really down to race, especially in the West. I just don't.
No, I don't
buy
think it's down to race either. But I think that what we have seen, to some extent, is an issue with the effects of slavery and Jim Crow, that mainly in regards to wealth.
But I still don't think it has much to do with the culture of divorce and single parenthood things
No,
like that.
that's a separate issue. That's a separate issue that has to be addressed,
Mm.
and that's affecting white people, black people, Asian people, so on and so forth. That affects everybody.
But anyway, I think we've gone off topic again. But I think we need to end it soon. But what would you think? Do you think there's ever going to be another Gamergate? Do you think they'll ever, or something like that? Apart from Comicsgate that's happened, do you think there's going to be one in anime recently with what's been going on, or is it now? Are we past that kind of point? Was that just?
We're probably going to see some movements like that. You see the Sad Puppies, Animegate, which I haven't really followed.
Is it actually a gate
now?
Is it now a thing in the anime community?
James Desborough, and I briefly touched upon it. I'm not sure if it's a gate. I haven't followed that story at all.
I haven't.
But
yeah.
In regards to like there being a huge cultural movement like this out of nowhere, probably not. Not in the short term. Now, obviously, 150 years from now, there could be some controversy in the gaming industry that blows up, right?
Mm-hmm.
People with their holodecks are going to be engaged in some sort of controversy regarding people trying to control what can be made in the holodeck, right? Maybe something like that. But that is a very, very long way off.
So what do you think has been like a long-term result from Gamergate, if we can even say there was one? Because a lot of people kind of consider it as a kind of a footnote in this long culture war that's been going on since at least the late 2000s. Like, what would you say has been a long-term repercussion, or even something that's positive? You know, a change. What would you say?
I'd say the biggest thing is that it was, as the book title implies, the first major battle of the culture war. It really kicked off this conversation and brought it into the mainstream.
That's pretty cool. I think it would never have been as big if it wasn't for the fact that technology, just at the right time, in the early 2010s, finally became competent enough. Because remember, in the 2000s, you couldn't even live stream properly. I mean, YouTube couldn't do it. There was dedicated sites, but they weren't good. They weren't big either. You know, like blog TV, things like that. You remember that back in the day?
Oh yeah, it was shit.
It basically happened at just the right time where we actually could reach millions of people. Well, we didn't reach millions, but we reached thousands, hundreds of thousands. So that's why it blew up, I think. And the fact that Web 2.0 peaked probably around about that time, or at least became good, you know?
Well, and there was a build-up, too, with all this stuff. There was a build-up, yes, in regards to games journalism being corrupt, and also in regards to them pushing this social justice agenda too. It was a build up over time, and then
it taught people about totalitarian ideologies and how the reason why they decided to infiltrate gaming and atheism wasn't because, I mean, the excuse was sexism and misogyny, things like that. No, really, it was control. They have to control everything. Otherwise, if they don't have this control, they don't feel safe. And these things that they don't control will probably end up being where opposition develops. And we've seen that, haven't we, with Gamergate in many ways.
Well, and it's hilarious too, because like I think it was Last Go Get Us said in the chat, it's all about class, and that's true. And
gamers are
oddly enough, well, no. In regards to what's happening in broader society, broader culture, right? As a society, we've made great strides in regards to racial equality and equality of opportunity in the United States,
and in Britain,
and in the Western world in general, right? We've made great strides towards this in the past few decades, and everything was pretty much fine. Like obviously, there were a couple instances like Rodney King, right, in the 90s.
Stephen over here, yeah.
And there were a couple instances here and there, right? But that was like once every 7 years. And then around this time, around 2013, 2014, things started to blow up all of a sudden, and now everybody's got an opinion on this. And people have become pessimistic for the first time.
In a way. Almost like it's been agitated.
It was the Russians.
It doesn't have to be the Russians, though. But it won't surprise me if things come out in 100 years' time and we're all dead, right? That there was some kind of, not government, but ideological big business, people who own big businesses in, like, say, activism spheres were kind of stirring the pot in society. And that was what brought about this whole mess we're in now. Or maybe it's not that. Maybe it's just civilizations now, we decline and fall. I mean, I'm sure the Romans had this. I've heard things that there are certain parallels to this, but I kind of dispute.
Mitch,
I'm not.
What are you doing? What are you doing? You haven't read Steven Pinker's book yet. That's the problem.
I've not read it yet.
It's the greatest time to be alive in all of human history, my friend.
Well, technologically, yeah, and
not just technologically, in regards to everything.
Well, you know what I mean, but I mean, I'm thinking culturally though, we're still a long way off.
Well, yeah, culturally, we've made the greatest strides ever in human history as well.
Currently, this like bourgeois elite is doing their best to undermine it.
yes, that's the problem. We have to push back against this.
I think they've had a lot of success doing that. They've pushed it back to at least what it was like in the 80s, you know? You know what was interesting? You know, we were talking about racial problems, right? And how these events happen once every 7 years.
Yeah.
There was a guy a mixed race guy who got shot in London. Yeah, in London by the police. I think he was actually a criminal, right? But the thing is, he is now no longer in.
Sorry,
catalyst. So
you're cutting out. What do you say?
Going out. Sorry. Am I okay now?
You're okay. Yeah.
Okay. So there was this riot, and this guy got shot by the police in London, and that created protests within his. Well, he was mixed race, but the black community in London. I think it was Tottenham. They protested, and then it ended up being riots across London, and they were so big that they had to get reinforcements from other parts of England. Which, and interestingly enough, the white working class, well, not the working class, the underclass, they decided to take that opportunity to, for whatever reason, maybe due to lack of police presence, which is weird, they chose to use that opportunity to air their grievances and looted and rioted. And that was the most interesting thing I've ever seen in my life. And like, it kind of just resonated with what you were saying.
Yeah, the London riots.
Yeah, it ended up being a white thing rather than a black thing, because by the end of it, it was just these people who were obviously part of the underclass. And what were they stealing? TVs, PlayStation, things that they couldn't get.
Right, they weren't stealing food.
They were stealing commodities. Well, actually, some did get food. There was one guy who, I think he stole like a big bag of basmati rice. Some of it was kind of funny, a bit meme-ish, but it was really eye-opening. I actually ended up on TV on that, on one of the. I I wasn't like a guest. I was just in the audience, and it was like a really hot button topic when I was 17 years old. It was and I still think to this day that I mean, that had an effect on British society, because guess who became famous out of that? Owen Jones wrote a book called Chavs, which is our version of white trash. He wrote a book about how that's horrible and how there's been a demonization. But since then, he's shown his true colours, or at least he's sold out, and now he's just, typical social justice warrior. It's interesting how these events kind of create people. They make people famous, or they show something underneath society's underbelly that is then later on covered up again, because after that, there was nothing. Sorry, I don't know where I'm going with this now. Sorry.
Did you want to take questions from the chat, or do you want to close it down? Or
anybody wants to ask a question? Yeah. British cop nicks. No, they're not anywhere near as cool, Black Lord. Someone in Birmingham got killed when hit by a van. Anyone got any questions for that? And they said that's great then. For Humanity Forever. Oh, here's a question for me. Why Humanity Forever? Was that this philosophical change, or was it just
partly a philosophical change, and partly Netscape is a web browser from the 90s. So I wanted a unique name that actually reflects what I'm doing with this channel as well. My channel.
Have you seen that guy Merriweather who does all the cartoons?
No.
He does cartoons based on the web browsers, and Netscape is a character. She's a cute little anime girl, It's like, do you not remember me, Microsoft? Not Internet Explorer? Oh, he's already asked you this, but our trap's gay.
I think he's asking you this, Mitch.
He's asking me this, yeah. Not for me, guys. For Humanity Forever here.
Oh, come on! You got to answer the question.
I think I've already said this before. They are gay. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on Pakistan and India? Again, not for me, guys. For what do I think about Pakistan and India? It won't devolve into nuclear war. We'll be fine. They'll sort it out because everybody stands to lose if they exchange. There you go.
So you talk about foreign policy a lot now on your channel, or?
No. Well, have I? I might have. I tend to forget what I make videos on sometimes, but I haven't. It's been actually a lot of my biggest videos have been domestic political issues in Britain. People all over the world seems to be interested in what's going on over here. But anyway, I think we've still not seen the end of this culture war, and the thing is, like, the peace. To quote Final Fantasy X, the calm, right? It never seems to last very long. I don't remember there being a particular amount of time between the culture war between religion and secularism in America. Not really here. Like between the fundamentalist Christians and, I guess you would say, atheists. Your secularists.
Yeah, I mean, there was obviously a big culture war for decades here. You had Christopher Hitchens, like you said, and Sam Harris, and the Four Horsemen, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I don't remember.
But the Christian right lost bad, and they lost because their ideas were shit. It's funny because, like, you see the alt-right. The alt-right hates conservatives. They say, what are conservatives conserving? And it's like, well, what are the things that you want to conserve exactly? Because the things that the Christian right was standing for in the 90s and 2000s were shit. They were standing for, stopping gay people from getting married?
Well, yeah.
That's in stopping video games from being made that are violent. Like that, this were not ideas worth defending, and they lost in the marketplace of ideas.
Exactly, yeah. Last Go Getter asks, how do you feel about trying to integrate and interact with social justice groups rather than building alternatives? Can I answer first?
Go ahead, yeah.
I'll be brief. I say you can't, because they're totalitarian and their natural inclination is to control. So you kind of can't integrate with them because they will eventually, like a parasite, try and take over. It's the right-wing equivalents are the same. The alt-right are the same. That this is how these ideologies work. Yeah,
you're probably not going to be able to join their groups. They won't really let you in to most of their groups, probably.
And if they want to let you in, you have to kowtow to them rather than compromise. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think you should interact with them and should try to, insofar as you can, and should try to reason with them and provide an alternative viewpoint, and do so in a way that is respectful, and do so in a way that is trying to understand where they're coming from, and do so in a way where you are providing charity to their views and not just trying to straw man them, but but try to address the strongest possible arguments that they're making.
When I was at that meeting, Sargon said it best. I don't know if you saw that on his channel, but attack the ideology, not the person, really, unless that person has done something wrong. You know?
Right, exactly.
But some people, even on, I guess you would say, quote unquote, this side, don't get that because they're emotional. You can't be emotional. It's like Aristotle and on rhetoric, right? I don't mean to sound pretentious, but you probably know this. And I think a lot of my audience will know this as well, because I don't insult people's intelligence. But they say, he said that there's 3 types of rhetoric, isn't there? There's logos, ethos, and pathos.
Pathos? Yeah.
I don't know the exact translations apart from the first 2. So ethos is the ethical argument, I think. Logos is the logical argument, and pathos is the emotional one. But there seems to be ethos and pathos seem to be very similar to me, but it doesn't matter. He viewed pathos and ethos as the worst arguments, and logos is the best one because it's logic, isn't it? Right? And basically, a lot of people fall. Not only do they fall for the latter 2 arguments, so ethos and pathos, but they also use it more rather than logos. But that's just humans. We are irrational, all of us, and we've all done it. I've done it. You've done it. My audience has done it. Your audience has done it. It's about just trying to curb it, I guess, in a way.
Well, and it's interesting you bring up some people in our community don't really seem to understand this. It's honestly, oddly enough, the thing that is really disturbing about the anti-Shibu community is not the alt-right, right? The alt-right's a tiny little fringe.
Mm-hmm.
It's that there's actually a lot of YouTubers out there now who are basically they exist solely to shit on people and shit on media that they believe to be social justice-y. And like they just have no constructive criticism whatsoever.
And
it's just look at this
with left tube or whatever they're called, you know.
Well, it's outrage culture, right? They're basically saying, look at this and be outraged. That's like the same clickbait stuff that we were fighting in Gamergate, but on YouTube now.
I mean, there was a big drama recently in you know, like the kind of sphere of YouTube that people like H-Bomber Guy and Peter Coffin hang out in, you know.
Yeah,
it had this massive controversy because Peter Coffin, basically, he has a friend called Lorelei Bailey. You probably heard of her, right?
No, I don't follow this stuff too closely.
Well-known lolcow who's been accused of many sexually devious stuff, transsexual person, and a lot of people apparently in that community have been woke to this now, even though it's been well known for almost 20 years, almost, that she's kind of like that, allegedly. And they didn't like the fact that he defended Lorelei Bailey, and all of a sudden now his mates and himself are saying, "Oh, call out culture, it's dangerous and toxic." And it's like, yeah, maybe you feel like that when it's your side fighting each other, but not when you do it to other people. You know, you're out of your ideology.
Right. Well, it's odd. You're seeing a lot of people switch sort of sides, or not even switch sides, but realize that this is bad, but they don't seem to be cognizant of the fact that they were engaged in this type of behavior themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. And some of these people wrote the rule book in a way, you know.
Oh, there's a question from Finnerer.
Oh yeah, Fenrir. Yeah. Where do you see your channel 2 years from now? What contemporary topics interest you?
I actually don't know. I don't really make videos too often. I'm probably going to make one about the Mortal Kombat drama.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that. Something to do with one of the characters, right? They've been censored.
Yes, they believe that they've toned down the sexuality in the game.
Which is ridiculous, because Mortal Kombat's meant to be overly violent, overly sexual, men and women. People forget that the men are overly buff and basically like gods, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger's, and the women are like, well, who's the female equivalent of Arnold Schwarzenegger? I guess you ever played with him in Red Sonja, I guess, right? Someone like her. I forgot her name. You know who I mean.
Well, I guess, I don't know. I don't really pay attention to movie stars too much.
It's more the look of the person than anything.
Yeah, so I might do a video on that, but in terms of the long term, I'm not really sure. I sort of make videos when I feel like it.
Bridget Nielsen.
But mostly I think I want to, the reason I changed the name of the channel to Humanity Forever is because I want to approach topics from more of a humanist perspective. and try to understand the underpinnings of what's going on, and also, and I guess I could call myself an enlightenment liberal.
Yeah.
If anything, like I don't really believe too much in ideology,
Mhm.
but if I were something, I'd be an enlightenment liberal or a classical liberal.
Mm.
And I want to promote and defend the values of the Enlightenment against the alt-right and against the social justice left. But I also make videos about healthcare sometimes, things like that too.
Would you ever move into, say, more philosophical topics, or would you just stick to this, what you're doing right now?
Uh, like I don't want to be just another culture warrior.
See, I
So
being that, but I want to be more.
I want to be more too.
Yeah. I don't mind
But
being.
it's tough though,
Mm.
because oftentimes when you're trying to approach things from a philosophical perspective, it's hard to have a unique view or understanding, right? Because what are you doing? You're taking the works of other people.
That's the thing. They all did that, didn't they? Nietzsche did it. He took the ideas.
Yeah.
Well, he later abandoned Schopenhauer, but he still did all these things, and he came up with his own ideas. Like, but a lot of time you don't know you're doing it. I often find that just do what you're gonna do, and you'll come up with something without realizing it. Like somebody will tell you later on, "Oh, that's new," and the original go, "Oh yeah, nobody did that." You know, honestly,
Yeah,
I
well,
think.
it's like so like my book, right? The last chapter
Hmm.
is focusing on like the philosophical side of what's going on here. But what am I doing? I'm quoting Pinker, I'm quoting Haidt, I'm quoting Goldberg, right?
Hmm.
I'm quoting other philosophers. I didn't come up with anything. Well, a couple ideas I came up with on my own a little bit, I guess, but it's all building on the works of giants.
Hmm.
And I make sure I'm very clear that I'm borrowing ideas from these people. I'm not like trying to pass it off as my own. But I'm taking a bunch of different work that other people have done,
Hmm.
and I'm pointing to that as possibly being an indicator of where this is coming from or how we can fix it.
Hmm. Well, that's quite an interesting take. I like that. See if there's any more questions, and if there's any more,
To
we'll
be or not to be.
not to not to be. um, yeah, I think we'll end it here. It's been a while. I've got to go and eat now. So, guys,
Yeah.
thank you for tuning in. I think we got a good audience today. Actually, I was expecting it to be a lot less. I've not been making videos recently because as you know, the computer error, and then I had work yesterday, and then I watched the football and didn't make anything. Oh God, I can be very lazy sometimes. But anyway, thank you for talking with me. It's been a long time, guys. By the way, we reckoned it was like, apart from a few instances on Twitter, it was like a year and a half or something, maybe two.
Yeah.
I'm still sub to you though. I forgot to sub to you with this new channel. I was like, how could I? So
Well, I didn't even know you. I didn't know you changed your channel name actually.
I changed the whole channel. This is a new one.
Oh, this is a whole new channel?
Yeah. See, it would be about 9,000 or 8,000 subs, but it's actually 1,000 and something. But YouTube doesn't show that anymore, do they? But yeah, this is a new one. Yeah,
What made you want to start over?
the algorithm basically. I got trapped in it, and I wasn't. And I was bleeding subs. I'm like, look, I can't continue not reaching people. So I started a new channel and migrated the core audience here, and it's been working out. Actually, it's been slow, like since the initial birth of this channel, but it's been a lot better, I think. And I've had a bit more freedom to kind of develop now, because by then I think I've reached a bit of a rut where I was doing the same thing over and over again. But I've done a bit more experimentation with this channel, and people are actually very patient, I find. And again, I've been reaching people. I've been making new friends, or rekindling old friendships. So it's been good, yeah. And it's eye opening as well. Like, I'd forgotten what it was like to have 1,000 subs. um, Humbles you a bit, but makes you want to work harder. Like, I've been trying to script my videos more now recently, and I've been thinking about going out into the world and filming events.
Hey,
Actually,
sorry, my internet cut out.
I just, it doesn't matter. It's just, the algorithm messed up the old channel, and I found a bit more freedom doing this one. Basically, it's working out. So anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. I've got to go now. So, any last words, Netscape or Humanity Forever?
To be a shill, the name of the book is Gamergate: First Battle of the Culture War, and it's probably going to come out in the next couple of months.
On Amazon?
On Amazon, yes.
How much, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm thinking about charging $15 because it's like $5 or $6 to print it. So I'm already losing that, and then plus whatever Amazon decides to take. So probably gonna make it about
Essentially,
$15.
$10 for the book, and no, $9 for the book, $6 for the printing. So if you spend 15, guys, you'll be able to get a physical copy if you enjoy it.
Yep, it's gonna be on Kindle too. And do you guys know Ashion? He's the Gamergate artist. He did a bunch of Gamergate art.
Yeah, sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, he's actually doing the cover for me.
Oh, very nice. So anyway, guys, buy the book. Spread it through word of mouth. Also, you can shill Desborough's book as well. His was very good.
Yes, Inside Gamergate by James Desborough. It's on Amazon. I think it's 10 or 15. I think it's 15 too.
I think I bought the Kindle version and I listened to the audio book. So anyway, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Humanity Forever, and we'll see you later.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for having me on.